How did you get into the convention circuit? How did you decide that as a path?
Much like if you're going to be in a band, right? If you're going to be in a band, you can't play parties all the time, birthday parties and backyard parties. You really want to like play a club. You know, if you want to get to the arenas, if you want to really make some serious money, if you want to get your work out there, you got to start playing clubs, and then you got to get a record deal. Well, as an artist, I don't have a very good online presence, and at the time you had MySpace and Media One, and you had all these little bitty things online that were just kind of taken off, but social media wasn't what it was. So really, the only way to further your art, if you really wanted to stop being in your own vacuum and get out there, you had to go to a show. And you can start small. There's your little local show that's held at the Marriott lobby on a Sunday. You go there, you pay your $25 back then, to sit at a table at 6x2. It feels like the Grand Inquisitor when you're there for the first time. You put your stuff down, the stuff that you work so hard, you staple all your stuff together, you make them all right, and you sit and you wait for 9 hours for no one to buy your shit. Begging that this person might buy. Oh, maybe that person might buy. Oh, this person's coming up to you. Oh, they just want to use the restroom. So you learn how to set up your booth. You learn how to display your product. You learn how to talk about your product.
Am I wrong? Is there? I thought I remember there being a costume of this character as well.
Yeah. In the early days, I got a trench coat, I got a hat, and I made a monkey suit. Basically, I created a fried pickle costume. I got glove hands. I learned about latex. And I thought, well, if his hands are all bumpy because he's been fried, well, it's got to be bumpy. So I got what's it called? I got glue, like builder's glue. Let it dry, and then you paint it, and you add the bumps, and then you get a mask. I got a mask and repurposed it. Basically, took the face, turned it around, and yeah, I walked around as my own pickle character for a few years. It's awful because in order to make it work, you have very small eye holes and a very small mouth hole. And if anybody's ever taken a plastic bag and covered their face over it and given you one little cigarette area worth of breathing, it's claustrophobia inducing, But it was for a reason. I'm like, Viva la Q! So I made a melon baller. I had a pea shooter. I had my trench coat, and in 98-degree weather, I walked around Dragon Con for a couple of years as my character.
What was the convention experiences like? And if I could ask, do you have any wild stories of people you either met at these conventions or ran into?
There's one infamous tale that I don't know how true it is, but I want it to be true because at Dragon Con they said, like, if you ever meet William Shatner, be warned, because he likes to have his handlers, right? He likes to take whoever's going to handle him from room to room. He likes to get them shit-faced drunk in his room and film them. Throwing up.
What?
Making asses of themselves. Yeah, he likes to get people. He liked to get people drunk. And there was this one guy. He's like, "Yeah, William Shatner caught me throwing up all over his bathroom, and he just laughed his ass off at me." So, and I thought, well, that's a weird way to get kicks.
Yeah, I don't know if that's endearing or psychotic.
I don't know, but I want it to be true because I just think, like, there's a man who's so bored because he's just incredibly famous that this is what gets him off. But hey, look. No one put that drink to their mouths. All right, they took it because you're drinking William Shatner and you got a story.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that, for myself, because I leave it all at my booth. I get there early. I stay until we close, and I make sure I'm standing and talking to every single person. And then that requires that when I'm done, I got to go to bed right away because I got to do it again the next day. And if it's Dragon Con, I got to do it for 4 days in a row. And it used to be that my voice would be lost on Sunday, but I was at this show in Tennessee. I'll never forget it. It was called MTAC, and it was my first time there. And I was across a very famous anime guy, and we were just hitting it off, right? And I was doing very well. It was one of my best shows of all time because, like, I got all this pickle stuff, and this guy's across from me. He's like the most famous animation guy right there, and I'm getting some of his runoff, So they invite me to their rave as the pickle. That was the only caveat. I had to come to the rave dressed up in the pickle costume. And I thought, All right, well, how hard that could be? I've done it all day. No big deal. I just got to stay up till 1 in the morning. All right, fine. So I go, and I had never been to a rave, and let alone on stage at one. It was packed, crazy, juga, 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 everybody. So they're like, now I have to get in my costume. I'm like, all right, you're going to go on in 5 minutes, right? I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? They're like, oh, just get out there and be you. I'm like, so I don't talk. It's like, no, just get out there and be you. I'm like, well, what does it look like? And I go out there and there's nothing but go-go dancers. Like scantily clad go-go dancers, okay?
And for our younger audience, what is a go-go dancer?
Go-go dancer, picture someone in a bikini who has been basically, well, I mean, eye candy. They dance on stage with lasers and all this cool stuff. They get a lot of body paint, and they're up there for just, they get everybody dancing. They get everybody going. The music keeps going, so you got go-go dancers up top keeping everybody dancing. They just keep the party going 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time, hours at a time. And they want me to go on stage with them. And you can't see in this stuff. So they blow all this dry ice, right? And I come out with my gun. And they're all, and now cue cumbersome. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do? So they walk me to the center of the stage, and they are like, oh, dance, pickle. So I'm like, I got my gun, I got my corn cob that I'm smoking, right? I'm blowing smoke out, and I'm doing all this dancing stuff. I'm shooting people with my gun. I get bumped every now and then. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I don't know what it is. I look down, like, the go-go dancers are grinding on me. So fortunately, I only had to last like 3 to 4 songs. Thank God. I was a sweaty mess. And I vowed never again.
that has to be like...
That was the most excitement I ever had.
That's going to be like one of the most memorable nights for some of the people going there. Because they're waking up the next morning with hangovers. They're like, did we dance with a pickle?
Yeah. I had a couple of guys that came up to the next day and they said, man, we did a lot of ecstasy. We thought that was not fever dream. They said, we thought you were a hallucination, man. Because, there's this giant pickle dancing with these girls in a bikini, and they just thought it was funny. Mm-hmm. And then there it is. I come back, and there's my pickle guy. I'd put him on a mannequin, right? So they're all, oh, my God, it's that dude. So that was funny. That was funny to me. But I vowed never to do that again, because I missed a lot of sleep that day.
Did it help you sell any books?
No, that's the other reason. It didn't help me sell anything, because the people who go to the rave don't go to Artist Alley. They're there to visit, the guys who did all the Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, or they're going to get their Pokemon cards. They're not coming to see a dude like me, and that's kind of the problem with being an independent. You're not, no matter what show you go to, I don't care where they put you, no one's coming to see you because you are not famous. So why do you keep going? How do you compete? What's your ammunition? And a lot of it is that I have to create something that is so... I have to be a bug light, okay? I have to be like that flame that moths go, what the hell is this? So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because they're there to see Brent Spiner. They're there to see, the bones of Leonard Nimoy.
I've only met 2 people at a Comic-Con once. It was the same one I met you at. And I forget his name, but he's from Indiana Jones and Sliders. You know what I'm talking about? He's
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He did something so cool. This kid ran up to him and started asking him questions about Indy, because he was like, you're actually him. And he went into character and got down on his level and told him what him and Indy had been up to over the summer or whatever. And it was just this...
That's fantastic.
Genuinely magical moment. And it was funny because I wasn't in his line. I was in the line next to his to meet Brent Spiner, and
sure.
Brent Spiner was a dick to me. It was the same weekend as the release of the second Independence Day, and I had asked him about it. And the second I asked, he was just like, yeah, whatever, I don't want to talk to you. Yeah, thanks. I was just like,
please leave.
And I was like, what? And then I saw the movie, and then I was like, oh,
yeah,
there we go.
Yeah. Well, you paid your money, but you weren't guaranteed a good time.
True.
You were guaranteed to see him and talk to him for sure. You were not guaranteed a good moment.
And you know what? I should have expected it.
But you do have a story.
He played Data. It's not like he was the most emotional character.
Well, that's true. I'll never forget his moment on like Big Bang Theory where he goes, "Hey, yeah, it's my character. Yeah, yeah," and he just rips it.
I haven't seen one of these in years.
Remember we used to do this and make them look like they're beaten off, you know?
No, I've seen so much of him from people's videos and stuff on the circuits, and like that. He just seems like a very pleasant person to meet. I had to ask the worst question at the worst time. But
I've gotten a couple moments like that where I know they say never meet your heroes, and I'm definitely in that category. Like, don't expect anything from your heroes. Meet them, but understand that's their only guarantee is that you are paying to actually just look at them or have a moment. You're not guaranteed to have a wonderful time, but if you can have a good time, that's awesome. But sometimes you have a bad time, and that sucks because it takes a while to undo that. Neil Adams was that for me. He had a bad day one day, and I knew he had a bad day, and I knew that's why he was taking it out on me. But I swore to God I would make sure that was not my last memory of him. You know, so when I started doing shows as a vendor.
Wait, what happened? What was the bad day?
He was at DragonCon, and he was in a little 2x4 table in the old where we used to have the artist alley, or not? Well, I say artist alley, the vendor hall. So he was in a small area. It was cramped. It was hot. No one was coming up to him. This is my second trip seeing him that day. He wasn't charging for autographs at first, right? Then I come back for another autograph, and he's charging. I'm like, oh, that's fine, you know. But I've bought a book of his work he didn't know anybody put out. And he's like, where'd you get that? I'm like, bookstore. He's like, what bookstore? You know, this whole thing, he hadn't been told this thing was released. Now he's signing something that he's probably not getting paid money for. That was the deal.
Oh.
So, you know, I'm like, oh, and I realized that was going on. He's like, oh, when did this come out? He's looking at the trademark and all that stuff. So he signs it, right? And I always make sure he signs it to me. I'm like, because this is for me. This is not for me reselling things.
Right, and for those who don't know, those are like scalpers who come in with a bunch of shit and they get it all signed, and then they're turning it right back around and selling it. It's very disingenuous.
Right. That's why when an artist says like, oh, who should I sign it to? And they go, nobody. I'm like, well, okay. All right, you rat bastard. I know what you're doing. eBay tomorrow. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always, you know, when I had Neil, he's signing it and he's begrudging. And I'm like, so are you having a good time? He gives me this total steel fake smile. Don't I look it? And it just like, he goes back to signing it, throws my book at me. I'm like, oh, that sucks. I wanted to make sure he didn't say asshole in my book, you know. Fortunately, he didn't. But years, well, actually not too many years later, about 2 years later, and for the next 4 years until he died, I made sure that whenever I was at a show with him, I would talk to him as an equal, right? Hey, Neil, how's it going, man? How's your show? He'd turn like, who the hell's calling my name? What do you want? He's like, just making that money, son, making that money. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the next show I'd say, hey, Neil, you still making that money? He's like, you know it, son, making that money, you know? And I'd walk by and go, hey, did you make that money today? He's like, oh, of course I made that money. I'm Neil fucking Adams. I'm like, yeah, you're Neil fucking Adams. And he'd go, did I ever tell you that story about when I had to say I'm Neil fucking Adams? I'm like, oh my God, he thinks we're buddies. Like now he's seen me so many times he doesn't know me, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, did I ever tell you that time? Like, that was a good moment because, like, I hear Neil, or whose favorite subject is himself, right? He's talking about Neil when I had to say, I'm Neil fucking Adams, right? Well, okay, well, you are Neil fucking Adams.